the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast, presented by Fantasy Data. Here's your hosts, Billy Muzio and Bradley Stalder.
Let's get ready to rumble. We are live here today with Josh Larky, the ever-anticipated, hyped-up event, Cam Akers debate. We burned down Twitter a few weeks ago, Larky, with this debate, and it was a lot of fun. I know we were just playing with each other, secretly trying to burn down Twitter. We have a lot of intense emotions here in regards to Cam Akers on both sides. And I challenged Larky to come onto the show and said, hey, why don't you come on the show? We'll debate this out. We're going to talk Cam Akers. We're going to talk Darrell Henderson, and we're going to let the people decide. Is Cam Akers really a first-round pick? So I want to say thanks, Josh, for joining us here. For those of you who don't know Josh, he's the director of analytics at playerprofiler.com and Roto Underworld. He also does Codebreaker podcast for Roto Underworld and radio for the radio network. And he does R coding with a football data course at thatrcodingsite.com. Got to throw the plugs in for him. So thanks for joining us, Josh. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, you guys. I mean, this is the highlight of my job, is being able to defend players and defend their honor, do my research, have my takes, and back them up. There's no better feeling than coming into the arena knowing that you're defending the right player. So I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
I feel like I'm a spectator at an event in the Coliseum. You know, you just hear the crowd roaring virtually. You know, I can hear all of the people. They're looking forward to this. But let's get to it, if that's all right. Cam Akers. Oh, yes. Okay, let's do it.
So I'm going to say, I think best things. I'm going to go ahead and let Larky, as the guest, take the floor. It's only the polite thing to do. And then I'm going to give a rebuttal. He gets a chance to rebuttal my talking points, and then vice versa. So go ahead. Floor is yours.
So before we even get into any type of usage with these players at the NFL level and what their NFL resume is, if we just look at Cam Akers, the prospect, and Darrell Henderson, the prospect, just to understand what the Rams might have been thinking at each juncture. So Darrell Henderson, very productive career at Memphis. Good job on you. Slightly undersized, more of a slasher, not quite tipping the scales at 210. I think he's around 206, 207. This is a smaller running back. He also did not really command the type of target share that you're hoping. Let me double check his player profiler page. I think he maxed out at a 7% target share in college was the highest that he ever got. So we have a small guy who's not commanding targets. Then we look at Cam Akers. This guy's a lot bigger. He's got 10 pounds on Darrell Henderson. He had a 12% target share at his peak in college. So nearly double the target share. That's exactly what you want in a feature back, as someone who has the size and can be active in the passing game. If we look at the draft capital, Henderson, 3rd round pick, Cam Akers, 2nd round pick. But remember, the Rams did not have a 1st round pick the year that they took Akers 2nd round. So that was actually their first selection of that entire draft. They went Cam Akers, the future bell cow. So just right there, if we look at the prospect profile, draft capital, we already notice some differences. Do you take offense to anything there? Any Darrell Henderson stats that you think in college really echo that this is clearly the better in a vacuum prospect than Akers?
No, but I want to say, if we are going to compare college stats, I'd like to talk about N'Keal Harry, his draft capital, where he went in the draft. I'm just a believer in NFL versus college. They're two different levels. And you have one player that may have dominated at that level that then comes into the NFL and sees their stats severely reduce, or they just aren't hitting the hype that they are supposed to hit. Kind of like yours truly here. Is he worth the hype yet? I'm not going to go out and say he's N'Keal Harry, because he's clearly already had a better year than N'Keal Harry. But if we're going to start taking a look at college stats and comparing them to today's NFL players, I think there's a lot of questions that we can really dive into that would really hit with a lot of other players. So I'm going to keep it more NFL relevant today. I don't have a lot of college stats because once they hit the NFL, it's a clean slate in my book.
Yeah, that's fair. I would say that, yes, you can have N'Keal Harry, but in all my running back research, I will say that the single most predictive indicator of whether or not a running back is going to become a workhorse in the NFL, it is draft capital. And that draft capital generally signals, especially Harry is a wide receiver, but especially at the running back position, draft capital signals intent. That's why
I wanted to use it at least once.
For some reason that came so loud in my earbuds, it made me jump.
You're gonna have to do it again, Billy.
Yeah. I was gonna do it in like the first 30 seconds, but I didn't want to be mean, so I was like, I'm gonna let him go.
I'm in the gladiator ring. So with running backs, draft capital, it's the single most predictive indicator. If you wanted to make a running back model where it's pretty much just draft capital, or a running back model where you don't have draft capital, there's a good chance that a running back model where you literally just look at draft capital, it's probably going to outperform the model where you don't have that, because of how important it is where teams signal their intentions that if you use high draft capital on a running back, there's debate. It's probably a pretty replaceable position. So if a team is going to go against the grain and use that draft capital, they generally intend to use them very heavily. So do you want to kick off the NFL portion of this now?
Yeah. So I'm just going to start off by saying, for those who are just started to tune in live, we had a few stragglers coming in. We set Twitter ablaze a few weeks ago after I posted those Rams projections. I know they came under some pretty hot heat. There's a lot of scrutiny. And Cam Akers truthers, they really came out of the woodwork to tell me I was wrong. And I want to begin by saying I like Cam Akers. I really do. I think he has a bright future ahead of him, but I have never seen someone do so little and receive so much hype outside Tim Tebow and Chris Herndon. Cam Akers is being drafted as running back 9 right now, as the 12th player off boards in the FFPC leagues through the first few months of drafting. And although he has had a good series of games down last year's stretch, particularly, I still have not seen enough to be convinced. Why am I hesitant? People ask. Many want to know why, or should I say now, people are demanding to know why I'm hesitant here on Cam Akers, or as we like to call him, Sam Cakers. I can't use that straight face.
Can we buzz him for that one?
Wrong player, Billy. Wrong player.
So before we dig in here, I want to let everyone know that I'm actually going to use Larky's own analytics over at Player Profiler tonight to support my thesis on why I believe Cam Akers is being overdrafted. So Akers has struggled with efficiency, to put it lightly. In 2021, he averaged 3.9 true yards per carry, which was good for running back number 54 in the league. Not running back 9. Running back number 54. He averaged 4.8 yards per touch. That was good for running back number 38. He only had 5 breakaway runs, only 5 the entire 2021 season, which was good for running back number 30. Running back 39 in breakaway run rate, running back 27 in evaded tackles, running back 44 in juke rate at 17.3%, running back 76 in production premium, running back 48 in dominator rating, running back 117 in fantasy points per opportunity, and running back 63 in red zone yards per carry. Added minimal receiving work, only 14 targets in 2020 to be exact. And these meddling numbers leave a lot to be desired. The cold, hard truth, Darrell Henderson was more efficient with his touches than Cam Akers was in 2020 in every single category that I just mentioned. Every single one. The kicker, Henderson, is still here. And although I believe Akers will receive most of the work in this backfield, I see Henderson being involved, and to top it off, more than people expect, which in turn caps Akers' upside. I want to sprinkle in a little bit of our own fantasy data metrics now. Akers was also bad in the red zone. I want to pull up a share screen here for people to see. I'm going to click this real quick. I should have done this beforehand.
Billy's trying out the multimedia here. He's pulling out all the stops here, Josh.
I don't have any kind of PowerPoint set up.
So that's the wrong screen. Let me look.
Already giving yourself the red ink.
Already given myself the red ink.
Wrong.
Let me
Even
try
the
this
text
again.
says you're wrong. The text color says you're wrong there, Billy.
Let me see. Window, Chrome tab, and we have Fantasy Data Analytics. There we go. Okay. So a couple things here. If this doesn't work, I'm going to pull in up the red zone. So 2020 red zone, and oh, my favorites are gone. Okay, well this is wonderful. Okay, now it's not as powerful. It's not as powerful here.
I'm feeling underwhelmed, Billy.
Very underwhelmed.
The viewers are feeling underwhelmed. Listeners are favoring Josh at this point. The crowd is starting to moo. They're starting to moozio. Moo.
For some reason, I had the hyperlink saved with my favorites in there, and now it's not pulling up. But so bottom line is Henderson beat Akers in every single category inside the red zone, inside the 20, inside the 10, and inside the 5. And so we're starting to see a trend here. A lot of other running backs have been more efficient than Akers has in several categories. I mean, I just mentioned off like 15 to 16 metrics here that we have, or that you have over at Player Profile. The icing on the cake is that Sean McVay and his Rams have always been close to the bottom of the league when targeting running backs, which will limit Akers in PPR formats as well. The Rams were 30th, 23rd, 26th, 32nd, and 30th over the past 5 seasons in targets at the running back position, which again limits upside, I believe, in Akers, especially PPR. Lastly, I believe everyone is drafting Akers based on his ceiling and his stretch down the final 4 games, where he averaged 23.5 carries a game. Need I remind you, Goff had a broken thumb, Henderson a bruised elbow, and a high ankle sprain. These amount of touches to me are unsustainable and unlikely, especially with Gunslinger Stafford in town now. Everyone is drafting a guy who has one career 100-yard rushing game. One. Over proven legitimate fantasy studs. I mean, I believe Cam Akers is being drafted at his absolute ceiling in 2021, and I will not participate in the madness.
So I will agree with everything that you said about the efficiency. You are correct. I would agree with that. I checked the stats. Darrell Henderson, if we just look at the efficiency stats, was more efficient than Cam Akers. But what we have to do, thank you, Leopoldo. I agree. He's above average. What we have to do is we have to peel back the curtain a little bit more, because these guys were not actually operating in quite the same offense. Yes, they both had noodle-armed, soon-to-be in Detroit, Jared Goff. However, they were facing completely different defensive fronts. So if we're going to stick with Player Profiler for a little bit, we can see that Cam Akers had, on average, the 5th most defenders in the box on his carries. Darrell Henderson, though, was at, I've got his rookie year stats up. Whoops. Those were abysmal. Those really bad. Those were bad. Yeah. I think we can all agree Akers rookie year.
It was non-existent. It was N'Keal Harry status.
So Akers had the 5th most defenders in the box on his carries. Henderson, same team, still same quarterback. It's Jared Goff, noodle arm, but he was 28th in average defenders in the box. So yes, Henderson was more efficient. I really hope he was more efficient. I would be shocked if he wasn't. He was facing different fronts, stacked front percentage where there's 8 or more defenders in the box, 26% of Henderson's carries, Akers 36%. These guys were not operating in the same offense, which is why we can't really compare efficiency. I believe that just looking at pure usage is the way to go here, because there is this confounding variable of completely different defensive fronts. And that's really the crux of my argument, is that the Rams, they know what type of defensive fronts these running backs are facing. They're in the film room. They can see exactly what every single play looks like. They can break it down. And I did a little bit of research into kind of the timeline of usage. So as we already talked about a little bit, Henderson was essentially non-existent his rookie year. Even the corpse of Todd Gurley and whoever Malcolm Brown is, we could say the J word. I'll say the J word. I believe he's a Jag. I think many others do as well. He's just a guy. Those two essentially
Jag of a jag.
Yeah. Those two essentially kept Darrell Henderson from doing anything his rookie year. Akers, if I remember correctly, 14 carries and 1 target in week 1 of the NFL season as a rookie. So he had more than 33% of Darrell Henderson's rookie year production in his first NFL game. Darrell Henderson, that week 1, had 3 carries. So already we have Akers with 14 carries and 1 target, Henderson with 3 carries and no targets in week 1. Essentially, the Rams already signaled, we want Cam Akers to get several times as many touches as Darrell Henderson. Week 1, rookie year. So we're not even looking right now at what's going on heading into year 2. But just already from the start, this was their intention. Unfortunately, Akers suffered separated rib cartilage in week 2 and left that game really early. If you look on WebMD, anything online, it's a 6 to 8 week recovery. Some say that it takes 9 to 12 weeks even to be fully healed from this injury. Okay, Akers, he's out for several weeks. From weeks 2 through 7, Darrell Henderson averages 14 rush attempts and 2.2 targets per game. Those are some decent numbers. Sanders last year, 14 carries, 4 targets a game. So 14 carries, 2 targets a game. Okay. That at face value sounds like, maybe Henderson's doing okay. Until we look at the snap share. Henderson has never been viewed as a featured back. Even with Akers totally out of the picture and jag of a jag Malcolm Brown there, and this being year 2 for Henderson, he could never hit a 60% snap share. So it is clear that this is nothing more than a complimentary running back. Akers returns in week 8, and he has a 20% snap share. They ease him in. He has 9 carries and a target. Henderson, 8 carries, 2 targets. It's basically even Steven the second Akers comes back. Then the next 3 games, very similar usage, 8 carries each with a touch of an edge to Henderson in the target department. Week 13, which is now 12 weeks. So the timetable of 9 to 12 weeks to be 100% healed from your separated rib cartilage. Thank you to the commenter. I agree. The Rams, very complete team. Now, he recovers from the separated rib cartilage, and in week 13, Henderson leaves the game with 2 carries to his name due to a knee injury. He later returns for 1 more carry. But that game, Akers has 21 carries and a target. The next game, Henderson has 2 carries, and Akers, as we know, that was the New England game on primetime. Akers has 29 carries for 171 rushing yards and 3 targets. That is kind of the tipping point where Akers has become fully healthy. The Rams say, let's unleash the rookie, which we kind of thought about doing his first game by giving him way more touches than Henderson. And from that point onward, as we all know, it was completely Akers' backfield. Even when he had the high ankle sprain and missed week 16, when he came back in week 17, it was game on again. And he had over 20 touches 2 weeks removed from a high ankle sprain. There was just never a moment once Akers recovered from the separated rib cartilage where he wasn't getting the super high snap share. Henderson never hit 60% in his career. And if we look in the playoffs, Akers was consistently, those were really good snap shares. Let me see, over 70% of the snaps in the upset win against Seattle, where they essentially rode the rookie for 30 touches. Essentially, when the Rams wanted to win, at the end of last year when they were in the hunt for the wild card spot in the playoffs, they're always riding Akers. Yes, Henderson was injured in the playoffs, but Akers was injured during the season, and we still couldn't even get that 60% snap share. I understand there may be concerns as to how much work Henderson can get. And what if Henderson actually gets 100 carries or something? Fortunately, we have a 17-game season this year. So, yes, I expect Henderson to have 75, 100, 125, maybe even 150 carries. But with an extra game, there's more to go around. And I believe Akers can get over 300 touches because we saw him at like a 450 touch pace for the final 6 weeks of last year. I don't understand how we can say in any way that Akers is not the clear-cut feature back in the Rams' eyes. Coach speak this offseason has said that. And if we just look at the usage, rookie year Akers was just so far and above rookie year Henderson that I believe that kind of explains away the efficiency difference when you look at what the coaches were doing and the difference with defenders in the box.
I agree with 95% of your comments. And so for me, this debate was never in question of Henderson over Akers or Akers over Henderson. I think we have a clear-cut lead back here in Akers. My only question and my prompt for the listeners, and more so our Twitter followers as well, is Cam Akers worthy of a round 1 pick? I have just so many questions. We went over the efficiency metrics already in the beginning of the pod. Couple other things you touched base on before I start digging in more to the analytics side. You mentioned Gerald Henderson's rookie year, which I believe, I'm going to come out and say it. It was a shit show. I mean, it was bad. It was horrible. It was non-existent. Mm-hmm. He also had Todd Gurley in the lineup, who the previous year was, a top running back in the league. Prior to that, he was the number 1 running back in the league. So although it was the tail end of Gurley's dominant careers, he still had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. I mean, he had still a 63% cash percentage. So there's a reason why Henderson's not playing as much his rookie year compared to someone like Cam Akers, who is going up against Henderson and Malcolm Brown. When you're going up against somebody who was literally the number 1 running back in the league, it's hard to steal snaps from, I believe. But again, I don't think Henderson, for me, is a talking point. It's more about the questions that I have for Akers. You mentioned you think he's going to have over 300. I think you said over 300 touches or attempts. Touches.
Okay. I think I actually have him projected. I think around 300 carries. I could double check my projections, but it's right around there.
I could get on board with touches. Carries for me, I think is going to be a little hard to hit. So that's about 17 and a half, roughly off the top of my head. I don't have a calculator in front of me. Bradley, your Rain Man. Is that 17 and a half? Anybody?
So I have him at 272 rush attempts.
Okay, because I'll say 300 is roughly 17.64 attempts a game here. He was averaging 23 and a half down the stretch. But again, we had Goff with a broken thumb, hence the stacked boxes. We had Henderson with a bruised elbow as well as a high ankle sprain. We had Malcolm Brown, who was in and out of games with injuries. I believe it was soft tissue. I didn't pull up my Malcolm Brown stats here. So I think there was just a lot of ways that this kind of the perfect storm came together, and Akers was the benefit of all these touches. I agree. He was more involved in his rookie year than Henderson. Again, I don't think it's as a relevant conversation when you talk about the backs, who they're up against and times in their careers. My main question is, can that usage be sustained in a 17 game season? 300 touches is a lot. We've only had 5 running backs in the past, I think 3 years or 4 years have hit that number. Zeke is on that list multiple times. Derrick Henry's on that list multiple times. Le'Veon Bell was on that list. I'm missing another name here, but there was, I think, a total of 5 running backs that have hit this carry mark. We're asking now a team that brought in a gunslinger who's going to be more pass focused, brought in Desean Jackson, sorry. They still have Bob Woods. They still have Cooper Kupp. They still have Tyler Higbeast, and they're going to throw the ball. I don't think this offense is going to be running 23 and a half times a game. You don't bring in a guy like Matt Stafford and trade away 3 first-round picks to run the ball 23 and a half times a game. You leave Goff in that backfield if you're going to do that. So I like Akers. I think he has a bright future ahead of him. My question is he worthy of a first-round pick? I could see him going at the back end of the second with guys like Dobbins, guys like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think that's more in line of where I have him in my rankings. I don't have him near the 300 mark. Without pulling up my numbers, I believe it was in the 250 range, 240 range.
You were at 222.
Even better, even lower. And and that's just because I believe this offense is going to pass. I believe they're going to involve Henderson. What do I have Henderson projected for, Bradley, for carries?
125, so 100 more rushes for Cam Akers.
I have Henderson at 124, so it looks like we have a very similar idea of Henderson.
Yeah, and I think you hit the hammer on the nail. I think Henderson is more of a complementary piece. I think that if he does have a breakaway run, because he did have more breakaway runs in 2020 than Sam Akers, and I'll hit it on myself. You ready? So my main question is just usage, and I think that comes down to our projections. How much is he actually going to be used? If it is a 300 carry back, then by all means, if we two carries, not touches everybody. If it is a 300 carry back, by all means, take him at the end of the first, because that's the type of volume that you would expect from somebody in the first round. I, on the other hand, don't have that projected, and I truly believe that this team is going to throw the ball. Hence why, to me, he's more of a second round target for me. He never lands in the second round. It's very rarely like 2.3, 2.4 at the latest. He's not making it to 2.7, 2.8, 2.9. I mean, unless you're in a super flex league, but I mean, that's just changes ADP altogether. So I agree with what Larky says, 95% of it. I just have concerns about the usage with this new offense with Stafford, and how much is this actually going to unfold inside 2021.
So I believe that one thing we have different is, yes, I have the Rams projected a little bit more run heavy than you do. However, let's just say that they're more pass heavy. We've already established that Akers is going to be on the field a whole lot more than Henderson. So if they are passing more, that's great for Akers, because I agree to Kisser. Thanks, Josh. I don't do too much StreamYard, so these comments popping up,
it throws
my
off his
eyes
game.
immediately, they move to it. Okay, refocusing myself. A run in PPR leagues, which it seems like we're talking about because we're doing FFPC.
Yep.
A running back target is worth 2.5 times as many fantasy points as a running back carry. We have never seen Henderson be a high snap share back. He's never out there for that many snaps. This is a breather back, a very complimentary piece. Akers had most of the third down work compared to Henderson. Once Akers was fully up to speed and recovered from the rib cartilage tear, he had pretty much all that work in the playoffs. Akers is going to
real quick. So we have Henderson projected for, I think it's like one carry difference. Our projections are primarily separated by rushing attempts for Cam Akers. So how many
targets too?
Targets.
I think
that's
the big one.
That was a big one. How many attempts do you have for Stafford?
Pass attempts.
Right
now I have 636 pass attempts.
Bradley, you have mine pulled up. What is mine?
I do. You have at 605.
Okay.
So I think they're going to be a faster pace of play team potentially. And then I have 461 total rushing attempts, including Stafford, including Akers, Henderson, etc.
Bradley, what do I have?
Billy's at 434.
Close.
So it looks like one of our big differences is that the Rams have been a fairly fast pace of play team. And I have them running the 4th most plays in the NFL this next season. Yeah. I believe they're going to push the pace. McVay's finally getting the quarterback that he's wanted. This is an offense that I believe will continue to be up-tempo and is going to be so efficient that they're having long drives with many plays. They're staying out on the field. They're keeping the chains moving. I don't see how this isn't, on paper, a top 10, probably even in the top 5 offense conversation. And generally, when I'm looking at a first-round pick, I don't look too much at the yes, the projections are important, but there's also a thought experiment that I like to do when evaluating upside, because ultimately all the running backs that are going in the first round and a lot of those second round running backs, these are all guys that we know are the starter in their offense, and they're frequently the starter in a good offense. Akers is the starter in a very good offense. And also, if we look at some of the guys that go ahead of him, I'd actually say that there's potentially more question marks about usage for some of the guys going ahead of Akers even. If we look at somebody like Zeke, Ezekiel Elliott is a way better, just pure runner than Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard frequently hits the wrong hole. Yes, he's fairly elusive, but he's not necessarily a polished running back. However, in the passing game, Pollard was a college wide receiver. Pollard generally looks much better when running routes. There's a little bit of a fear that all else equal, what if the Cowboys just say, yes, Tony Pollard is a better receiving back. That's the guy who's going to get the majority of the targets. Fortunately, with the Akers-Henderson situation, Akers has the better college receiving profile. He has the better NFL rushing profile, the better college rushing profile. There is not a single area of the field where McVay is going to say Henderson for this play is more uniquely qualified than Akers. And that's a thought experiment that makes me feel very good, because I know that assuming that Akers is rocking and rolling like I expect, he's never going to be taken out unless he's just tired and they need Henderson to come in as the breather back. So I think that's very important, is that the reason that I think our target projections are different is Henderson wasn't playing a lot of those passing downs once Akers was fully up to speed. That's why I have Akers at a 10% target share for this coming season, which amounts to 63 targets. And I have Henderson at a 3% target share, which comes out to 19 targets. And I think that's one of the big cruxes and differences with us, is that yes, 30, 50, 60, 100 carries, none of that stuff really matters that much for fantasy points. What matters is goal line work and targets. And those are two areas that I have projected. And from what we saw last year, once Akers was no longer dealing with a rib injury, where Akers had huge advantages at the goal line and in the passing game. And we agree, we both think this is going to be a really good team. The Rams on paper look incredible. If they are fully competing for a playoff spot and a high playoff seed all season, the guy that they want per touch in every single area of the field is going to be Akers. And they're going to make sure to maximize the amount of touches per game Akers can handle, which we saw last year in the playoffs is apparently 30. So that's a very, very tantalizing ceiling for me, that this is the better pass catcher, the better runner, getting goal line work on an elite offense. I'm all in on Cam Akers, and I think he's a first-round pick.
So yeah, and I'm not a first-round pick guy. So I finally actually, during that whole segment, I was able to pull up red zone data, because you just mentioned red zone data. So Darrell Henderson was actually more efficient in the red zone. In 15 games, Darrell Henderson had 32 attempts inside the red zone to Cam Akers 31, including down the stretch when he dominated touches. Rushing yards, Darrell Henderson within the 20 had 89 rushing yards to Cam Akers 79. Average per attempt, Darrell Henderson at 2.8, Cam Akers at 2.5. Touchdowns, Darrell Henderson had 4 touchdowns inside the 20 when Cam Akers only had 2. Targets, Darrell Henderson had 4 targets and 3 receptions for 20 yards and a touchdown, where Cam Akers had 2 targets with 2 receptions, 6 yards and a touchdowns. Cam Akers also fumbled in the red zone and lost it, where Darrell Henderson did not. Fantasy points per game inside the 20, Darrell Henderson averaged 2.7, where Cam Akers averaged 1.9. Total fantasy points inside the 20, Darrell Henderson had 40.9, where Cam Akers had 24.5. Go inside the 10. So this is including inside the 20, of course, but not anything outside the 10. 15 games for Darrell Henderson and 13 games for Cam Akers. They both had 21 attempts, 41 yards for Henderson, 50 yards for Cam Akers, 2 yards for Darrell Henderson on average, 2.4 for Cam Akers. Still the 4 touchdowns for Darrell Henderson, because all those touchdowns were within the both metrics here. We still have 1 reception for Henderson, 2 receptions for Cam Akers. Again, he lost his fumble there, so the same statistics all over again. But Darrell Henderson still averaged 1.9 fantasy points per game inside the 10 to Cam Akers 1.7. And now we throw in inside the 5, 15 touches to 13 touches, 11 to 9, 10 yards to 5, favoring Darrell Henderson, 1.7 fantasy points per game versus 0.9 to Cam Akers. So what's this data mean for everybody? Dissect it however you wish. I can see that Darrell Henderson was more efficient inside the red zone. I know that Larky, you'll bring up the fact of the stacked boxes. Nonetheless, they were both utilized inside the same fashion with similar attempts. Statistically, Darrell Henderson was more efficient, regardless of boxes or not. I still think that Henderson's going to be involved. I think that just caps the upside that we see here from Akers and deems him not worthy of a first-round pick, in my opinion.
All right. I think we've brought in a lot of points here. I'm going to actually put a bow on and recap for our listeners a lot of the points that we've each made, that each side has made. And I'm actually going to award points.
Awesome.
So based on, yeah, exactly. So a point to Larky for the better prospect for Akers. I think he made that argument pretty convincingly. Better target share, ran well behind. You didn't mention this, Larky, but the offensive line for Akers was atrocious, and he still did really well when he was in college. So point for Larky there. Not involved in the passing game. Billy, you mentioned that. A point for you. Okay, in the NFL. He did have that passing game usage in college, but we didn't really see it as much, at least his first year. Point for Larky. Sean McVay did say this past February that he views Akers as a 3-down back. So there is legitimate coach speak. And although we have to take that with a grain of salt, Sean McVay is he's like Pete Carroll, in that he's very optimistic. So we do have to take that with a grain of salt, but at least that narrative exists. A point for Billy with regard to the efficiency. I think that was brought up. There are other talented players on the offense. Billy brought that up as well. But Larky, you brought up how much Cam Akers crushed in the playoffs, and he absolutely destroyed. Even when they lost to the Packers, he went 18 for 90 and won. Like, that's how they wanted to beat the Packers. As a Packers fan, like, you can tell that
Bradley is used to teams running all over the Packers, including yours truly in the backfield here in the NFC Championship game.
So that pains me. It hurts my heart. That's my perspective anyways. And still, so Cam Akers, they rode him into the ground. Absolutely. And I think that Larky also gets a point for hitting on that ceiling. Like, Cam Akers absolutely does have that 30 rush ceiling that we have to take into consideration. And that's how the Rams could use him in a variety of games this season. But the last point that Billy made that I'll give him a point for, a lower rushing rate. Yeah. So I think that, why did I even write that down? I can't remember now. I gave you a free point there, Billy. I'll take it. Larky's like, that's not fair. But we get home field advantage here there, Larky. Sorry.
That's fair.
So I'll throw my 2 cents in on the Akers debate.
Wait, what's the tally though?
So
you have a tally mark,
right?
I think it was 3-3.
Ooh, Larky's over here like,
he's like, wait, a tie got it back? That's not
I came
fair.
on for a tie. You guys are wasting my time. I show up and it's a rigged tie.
So I'll throw in a couple things here. I personally am concerned about Cam Akers' passing usage. I agreed with you that his passing usage in college was pretty impressive. I was disappointed, frankly, that he wasn't out on the field. But I did a little research on why maybe he wasn't being used, and it was because he was the 116th worst pass blocking running back in the NFL per PFF. Compare that to Darrell Henderson, who is the 7th best pass blocking running back in the NFL. So I think that Darrell Henderson is at least going to get a buffer snap share. Like, he's going to be there, I think, more on third downs because they have to respect him. And you mentioned the stacked boxes, Larky. Like, that was a pretty big crux of undercutting Billy's efficiency argument. So that was a pretty sharp one. But when Akers was out on the field, he was 60. His route runs were 62nd, and he played mostly against the stacked boxes. So, like, if the defenses saw that Akers was out in the field, like, they would know that he's probably not going to catch passes. Like, he's out there to run the ball down their throats, almost like a Derrick Henry light. You know, like, you aren't going to play. You aren't going to defend Derrick Henry in the same way that you would Alvin Kamara, for instance. So I am concerned that Akers isn't going to get as much of the third down work as you had in your projections. But I think with Malcolm Brown gone as well, he led the team in running back receptions. So there is like running back receptions to go around for Henderson and for Akers, but I'm still concerned that he's not going to be, there. So is he going to be a first round pick? I mean, for full disclosure, I'm way lower than even Billy is on Cam Akers. But I think that Josh brought up a lot of interesting points with the ceiling that I think I hadn't put into my projections. And so I think that bringing Josh on has brought, I've learned a lot and has definitely changed my perspective on Cam Akers. I don't know if he's completely brought me up to the first round for Cam Akers, but I think that there is a ceiling there that I really wasn't considering in my projections. So thank you, Josh. I appreciate you.
So real quick, we actually had a comment here, and I think this is a good way to kind of take a look in big picture, because everyone's always concerned about ADP and projections and where do we have people ranked. That sun comes in at this time of the day perfectly. So can we get a rundown of where Akers sits in their respective rankings? Are you able to pull those up for you, Larky?
Yeah, let me pull it up right now. I believe I have Akers at either 6 or 7 overall.
So then,
the reasons I stated, where I think that he's better than Henderson in every way, and he's on a really, really good offense.
So then I'll list off a couple names, and you tell me buy or sell above Cam Akers. So we have Christian McCaffrey.
McCaffrey's above.
Bye.
We have Dalvin Cook.
Cook is above.
Bye.
Alvin Kamara.
Kamara's above.
Bye.
Derrick Henry.
Henry's above.
Bye.
Ezekiel Elliott.
Zeke's above, yes.
Bye.
Saquon Barkley.
Saquon's above.
Bye.
End of list.
End of list.
He's number 7.
Yep.
So not Aaron Jones, not Austin Eckler, not Jonathan Taylor.
Correct. Taylor's kind of the case of, I believe Hines in a vacuum is a better pass catcher. And that's what really worries me. Whereas I believe in a vacuum that Akers is a better pass catcher. So that's kind of what shook out that difference for me, was that I'm more confident in Akers' talent there than JT's.
I like hearing that, because Hines is one of my most owned players in best ball through so far, like 80 drafts of the season.
Yeah, I'm fairly below consensus on you guys. It seems like it's Akers for me. JT's one of those first round-ish running backs that I'm definitely many spots below consensus.
So Josh, we have Akers as his running back 7. So for me, above Akers, I have Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Zeke, Barkley, Austin Eckler. I also have Jonathan Taylor above. I have Antonio Gibson above. Nick Chubb, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, end of list.
Okay, so a few more. Are you worried at all about Gibson getting receptions? Because you cited the PFF.
He was sneaky good last year. So Gibson was sneaky good last year. Don't quote me. I think it was like 53 targets last year.
I was talking about pass blocking, because you're making the case that with pass blocking, Henderson was superior. If you look at pass blocking the other way, McKissick was a pretty elite pass blocker, and Gibson was like bottom 3 in the league. Gibson and Akers were both kind of in that bottom tier where.
Yeah, and that's why we see McKissick with like 100 plus targets last year versus the 50-ish that we had for Gibson. I do see an uptick for Gibson this year. Maybe if it's only 25% of that from McKissick to get him more involved, we're still in that high 60 to low 70 range of targets, which puts him in a pretty elite
25% of McKissick's 110 targets is, still pretty significant there, Billy.
It is significant, but I also think that McKissick up to this point in his career has been less than stellar, has been less than involved. And let's face it, Alex Smith has checked down Alex. I don't think that we're going to see that type of usage in any running back fashion for this backfield, but I do think that they get Gibson more involved inside the passing game for year 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm also worried there's Curtis Samuel there now, who's going to be operating out of the slot, because McKissick was frequently actually on the field with Gibson, where McKissick was in the slot. So I'm not quite sure if I'm ready to give a lot of those. I'm definitely ready to take those McKissick targets away, but I'm not quite sure how many are actually going to be going to Gibson versus Now we just have a hyper talented receiver in Curtis Samuel, who completely broke out last year and is now there.
Yeah, I just really like the Gibson's efficiency metrics too. I mean, he was, 8th in the league in juke rate, 16th in breakaway run rate, 7th in total touchdowns. I thought that he performed very well for a rookie. This team also has an outstanding defense. So if they get into a Fitz magic jam, and we're definitely going to see it, the guy will have 4 touchdowns and have 4 interceptions. It happens. Anyone who thinks it's not going to happen is lying to themselves. So Gibson, I think they're going to lean on those running backs here in order to kind of hide the bad quarterback play at times because they're able to with this elite defense. Which the same could be said for the Rams as well. If Stafford goes out there and blows up, or what may happen. So, but that's right at the tier for me, is that Gibson to CEH to Akers. Those are all kind of the same tier for me. I just think that tier is not in the end of round 1.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I think Akers is just on a better offense than Gibson, had the better college profile, the higher draft capital. And I'm more confident that I'm more confident in both the Rams offense. I'm more confident that, we really have no idea what we're going to get with Fitzmagic. I don't believe he's ever started every single game in a season before. It's probably going to be somebody else at some point, unless history bends when he's 39 years old. So I think there's actually quite a few question marks about that entire Washington offense still, where for some reason some people are viewing Fitzmagic as this panacea when, he's really not that great. Tua was actually better than him.
By the way, I like that word. I like that word.
Oh, thank you. I like that word too. Yeah. That's why I used it. So I think there's just a lot of questions about that Washington offense, where I'm just very confident that the Rams will have an elite offense and they have a great running back that they invested in and really rode in the playoffs.
All right. So I think that there's been a lot of good points brought up from both sides. Thank you, Bradley, for recapping them. Since we only go an hour typically, and we extended our Akers and Henderson debate, I think it was definitely worthwhile. I love the information that Larky came. He definitely had me kind of think about a few things that I had underprojected or maybe overlooked from my projections. And I think I'll adjust slightly. But I think that before we finish, I do just want to go through and give some of these other positional players we got 6-7 minutes, hammer through these. Normally we would go through the whole shebang. I just want to ask, buy or sell at ADP. Give each of you guys a real fast rundown. Robert Woods, Larky, are you buying, selling this year at ADP?
Yeah, I'm buying Woods.
Okay, Bradley?
I'll buy Woods as well.
I'll buy Woods as well. Cooper Kupp?
Yeah,
Larky?
I think very similar target shares. Sure, I'm buying Cooper Kupp too.
Okay, Bradley?
Yeah, give me Cooper Kupp.
Okay, well, all of us are 2 for 2 there. I think that's the no-brainers. Now we get into the fun ones. Desean Jackson.
No.
Yeah.
Best ball league only.
Okay, and I'm a no even in best ball. Van Jefferson.
Am I allowed to be in the middle? Where I think I've done a couple hundred underdog drafts. I think I'm actually like right around 8% exposure.
Okay.
I think he's just, I don't know, potential number 3 receiver in a good offense. Sub 4.4 wheels. Stafford's a high air yards quarterback, but he also completely flopped last year. So I'm in the middle.
I will sell.
Okay. I'm at like 3 to 4% on Van Jefferson. I have him mixed in just in case. He could do well. He could just do absolutely nothing. So I'm in the middle, but I'm going to say slightly more to the sell side. We have Atwell now.
Sell.
I'm a sell as well. Tyler Higbeast.
Last year was a sell. This year, I'm buying.
I'll sell it, but I don't like it.
I'm buying. The splits with Everett off the field were fantastic. That's why I wasn't as high on him last year either, 2020. I think that we might see a career year from Tyler Higbee. Not quite what we saw down the stretch of 2019, but I think, close, maybe, top 10, but I'm not going to say he's going to smash and be a top 5, but I do think he has a very high ceiling here with Everett gone now in 2021. Other notables, Bryson Hopkins. No,
not interested.
That's easy. That's all 3. Jacob Harris.
Also
for redraft, or
you could specify. Redraft is a sell for me. Dynasty's a buy.
That same.
Okay.
Sure. Billy, we got to talk about Matthew Stafford for just a minute.
Oh, I did skip one of the most important guys. Yes, go ahead.
So Matthew Stafford, he's my fantasy league quarterback 10. Buy or sell?
Sell.
I'm going to sell as well.
Very hard sell.
For me, I think he's more in that. I don't have my everything finalizer pulled up, but I'm going to say he's more in that 14 range for me.
Yeah, that's where I have him. I think it's difficult to make the case for him when there's a lot of other guys that are going to have more rushing and will also have a worse defense. So I think that there's going to have to be a lot that goes right with the touchdown percentage for Stafford to truly reach like the top 6, top 7 QB range. So that's why I have him below a lot of the other guys that I think have a more easy case to break into that elite tier.
I would agree with that. I think you're going to have to see like a 6.7 to 7% touchdown rate, which I don't think Stafford, without pulling it up, has ever hit that in his career, even when he had Megatron.
Yeah, I don't believe so either.
Yeah, I have Stafford for 9th in pass attempts, but 30th in rush attempts among quarterbacks. And, when you want a top 10 quarterback, you either need ridiculous volume or ridiculous touchdown rate or very high rushing. And you're banking on touchdown rate, as you mentioned. And I don't think Stafford's going to get 727 attempts like he did when he was in Detroit. You mentioned the Rams defense. They're one of the best in the NFL. I don't think they're going to be playing, 45-38 games, So, yeah, he's a sell.
Yeah, I think that's my hesitation with Stafford this year. He's coming from a softer division. He's coming into an NFC West. But yes, I'm a little biased, but I do think it is one of the toughest divisions in football, even from a non-biased opinion. I mean, just in terms of defenses, close games, everything that we have involved, players, the rosters, everything. I think that Stafford might hit a little bit of not necessarily a slump, but maybe a light wall in terms from his normal passing game statistics. Pretty high interception rate in most of his careers. He's known for, being a gunslinger and risking it. And I think that might get him in trouble inside the NFC West. Well, Josh, I just want to say thank you for coming on the pod. It was ever hyped. I actually was at a golf tournament this week and I didn't drink today. This is the first time I've left the tournament in 5 years sober. I was actually kind of shocked. And I said, I want to be sober for this podcast. I want to be able to
be ready.
Had to be ready. Had to be able to talk numbers. I don't want to be like six Jack Daniels deep, talking Sam Akers numbers. And got to keep throwing it out there. But I really do appreciate you coming on. A lot of good data, a lot of good analytics for our listeners, our viewers. So thanks for coming on. Tell the listeners where to find them. Throw out your plugs. Do your thing. Let the listeners know where you're at.
Well, first off, thanks for having me on. This was a blast. I feel like I have a few things to go back to the drawing board and reconsider, double check some things, turn some knobs. So it's always good to have a back and forth where the other person's really prepared as well, because I think that's when both of us can really learn. You can find me on Twitter at jlarkytweets. I'm taking a 2-day hiatus from Twitter, which started about 8 hours ago. So you won't see anything this weekend, but I assure you I'm still here. I'm on I think I told people I was at an etiquette retreat or a fine dining retreat, which is not true. I'm just taking a break. But I'm also the director of analytics, as mentioned, a player profiler. We have a lot of really cool stuff going on there right now. So head to the site and check out all the new things that we have going on. And a lot of the behind the scenes work, I'll have some type of part in that, as well as our lovely summer analytics interns. Shout out to Michael and Neil for making my job a lot easier every single week this summer. They're incredible. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Bradley, this is it for me. I'm back to golf tomorrow in the morning. I'm going to be on a Twitter hiatus for the most part. I will tune in every now and then, especially if there is any Cam Akers tweets that are floating around. But I appreciate you, Josh. Bradley, thanks for moderating. Thanks for also giving us kind of a breakdown of points made. I think that was very helpful for the listeners and for the viewers, even if we did get one home field point. So I definitely appreciate the home field point. But thanks for tuning in, everybody. Bradley and I will be back here next Tuesday. We're just going to upload to YouTube on to Tuesday, not live. And then we'll be back here live next Friday, the 23rd. And we actually have that is, I think that's Ray Flowers coming on. Is that?
Yeah,
it is. So Ray Flowers from SiriusXM Radio will be joining us on the 23rd. We got him for a 20-minute window. So very, very short, condensed, very efficient podcast, unlike Cam Akers. But we're going to make sure that we get this all wrapped up just in time. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, and have a good night.